In the early spring of 1953, a catalog arrived at 300,000 Canadian homes. It was thick, colorful, and full of everything a post-war family could want. Appliances, clothing, furniture, tools, even live baby chicks. Canadians could flip through it at the kitchen table and order almost anything they needed without ever leaving their house. That catalog was the beginning of Simpson Sears, the company that would become Sears Canada. And for decades, it was one of the most powerful retail operations this country had ever seen. By the time it all ended in January 2018, nearly 12,000 Canadians had lost their jobs. Pensioners discovered their retirement funds had been gutted. Suppliers were left unpaid. And one of the most iconic names in Canadian retail history had quietly ceased to exist. This is not a story about the internet killing a department store. It is a story about what happens when the wrong people get control of something great. The origins go back to September 1952, when Sears, Roebuck and Company in Chicago struck a partnership with Toronto's Robert Simpson Company. Each side put up $20 million and created Simpson's Sears Limited, a joint venture designed to bring the Sears catalog model to Canada. The first Simpsons Sears spring and summer catalog was printed and delivered to 300,000 Canadian homes in early 1953. On September 17, 1953, the first retail store opened in Stratford, Ontario. A second followed in Kamloops, British Columbia, before the year was out. What followed was one of the great retail success stories in Canadian history. Sears understood Canada. It understood the distances, the rural communities, the suburban families who needed everything from a Kenmore washing machine to a Craftsman wrench set, but had no easy access to a city center. The catalog became a cultural institution. Its catalog business became iconic, reaching millions of homes with a wide array of products. The catalog, often called the Wish Book, was particularly significant during the holiday season, influencing consumer culture and creating nostalgia for generations of Canadians. At its height, Sears Canada generated annual revenues exceeding $4 billion and maintained a network of over 90 locations alongside catalog and online operations. It operated 125 full-line department stores at its peak. It was, for much of its existence, Canada's #1 retailer. Then the cracks began to appear, and they appeared long before anyone was paying attention. The first serious blow came in 1994, when Walmart launched in Canada. Walmart brought deep discounts north of the border and really took out the low-price end of department stores' business. Sears had always tried to be everything to everyone, and suddenly the low-cost segment of that identity was being undercut by a competitor with a fundamentally more efficient operation. At the same time, specialty retailers began carving up Sears department by department. Future Shop took electronics. Sleep Country Canada took mattresses. Brick Warehouse and Leon's took furniture. Home Depot took hardware. And Toys R Us took toys. Big American clothing chains like Gap chipped away at apparel. Each of these competitors did one thing and did it better than Sears could. The department store model, which had thrived on breadth, was being dismantled category by category. Sears responded by chasing its competitors rather than redefining itself. It tried upscale boutiques. It tried partnerships. It tried new branding. The store design, the layout, the product line, and the merchandising was stuck in the 1990s. Nothing had really evolved or changed inside their particular model. Experts who studied the company noted that Sears was targeting a specific customer type, a 40-year-old woman with one child and another on the way, living a hectic lifestyle, but had structured nothing around actually serving her exceptionally well. There was no compelling reason to choose Sears over anyone else. But none of that fully explains the speed of the collapse, because here is where the real story begins. In 2005, a hedge fund manager named Eddie Lampert took control. Lampert was not a retailer. He was a financial engineer, the kind of person who looks at a business and sees a collection of assets rather than a living operation. He had previously managed to pull Kmart out of bankruptcy in the United States, and for a brief moment the business press wondered if he might be the next Warren Buffett. What Lampert actually did was treat Sears Canada like a piggy bank. Since 2005, Sears Canada paid out more than $2.9 billion in dividends, and the lion's share of that money went to Sears Holdings and ESL Investments, which were both controlled by Lampert. Meanwhile, the amount reinvested in the business fell from $86 million in 2005 to just $27.4 million by 2016. Read that again. While the world around Sears was transforming, while Amazon was rewriting the rules of retail, while competitors were investing in store design and digital infrastructure, the money that should have gone into Sears Canada was being extracted and paid to shareholders. Capital expenditures collapsed year after year. The audited statements illustrate a steady decline in capital expenditures from $101.6 million in 2012 down to just $27.4 million in 2016. The result was inevitable. Stores looked dated. Inventory was stale. The e-commerce platform was underfunded. Sears had a higher percentage of full-time staff with benefits than some of their retail competitors, who relied more on part-time employees. As sales started to dwindle, they were still stuck with a higher percentage of full-time employees inside of their system. The cost structure of a thriving retailer was now dragging down a shrinking one. Sears Canada had a net aggregate loss of $727.7 million in the 3 years from fiscal 2014 through fiscal 2016. In fiscal 2013, by contrast, it had recorded net earnings of $446.5 million. The speed of the reversal was breathtaking. By early 2017, the company was burning through cash at a terrifying rate. By the first quarter of 2017, losses had increased to $144.4 million. The company was forced to borrow $300 million. By the end of the first quarter, its cash position had tumbled to $164.4 million, down 53% from a year earlier. On June 22, 2017, Sears Canada filed for creditor protection. It announced the closure of 59 stores and the layoff of 2,900 employees. A management group led by Executive Chairman Brandon Stranzel attempted to buy the business and keep it alive. That attempt failed. On October 10, 2017, following exhaustive efforts, no viable transaction for the company to continue as a going concern was received. The company sought court approval to liquidate the approximately 130 remaining locations. The closure of all operations led to a loss of nearly 12,000 jobs, of which roughly 3/4 were part-time employees. Pensioners who had given decades of their working lives to the company discovered their retirement benefits had been severely undermined. The public outcry was significant. The sense of betrayal was real. A former CEO of Sears Canada, Mark Cohen, put it plainly: when you start to sell off your best stores for cash and dividend, out that money to your principal shareholder rather than reinvest it in the business itself, You set in motion a process which leads exactly to where Sears ended up. Sears Canada did not collapse overnight. It was hollowed out over a decade, slowly and deliberately, by people who understood balance sheets but had no interest in the living institution they had inherited. The wish book that once excited an entire country had been turned into a financial instrument, and when there was nothing left to extract, the lights went out. The last Sears Canada store closed on January 14th, 2018. 65 years after that first catalog landed on 300,000 Canadian doorsteps.